Have you ever wondered if beauty could hide something far more sinister? What if the very thing you cherished the most turned against you? Helena Riveres, a successful landscape architect, believed she had found her dream home, a secluded house surrounded by a breathtaking garden. The moment she and her husband Marcos laid eyes on it, they knew it was perfect. The flowers bloomed in radiant colors, the trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the scent of fresh earth filled the air. But beneath this picturesque scene, something darker lurked, waiting patiently for them to uncover its secrets. What starts as a dream home soon becomes a nightmare, as the garden's true nature begins to reveal itself. The plants aren't just growing, they're watching, moving, and waiting. Helena begins to notice strange occurrences around the garden. Flowers shift position overnight. Vines creep up walls despite her meticulous care, and the once soothing rustle of leaves at night now sounds like whispers. Faint, unintelligible, but undeniably there. Marcos dismisses her concerns at first, laughing off the idea that the garden could be anything more than just beautifully maintained. But Helena feels it in her bones. There is something wrong here, something that defies explanation. The garden feels alive, in a way that goes beyond mere growth. And soon, it will show them what it truly wants. Before we dive deeper into this chilling tale, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss the terrifying journey ahead. Helena's first night in the new house was supposed to be peaceful, a moment of respite after the chaos of moving. But instead, it brought something else entirely, a dream that felt far too real. In the dream, Helena finds herself standing in the garden, surrounded by the soft glow of moonlight. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers, a smell so intense it nearly suffocates her. The silence is unnerving, broken only by the faint rustling of leaves, though there's no wind. Every sound is amplified, from the creak of branches to the soft crunch of the soil beneath her feet. It feels familiar, yet something is deeply, unnervingly wrong. As she moves deeper into the garden, her fingers brush against the petals of a flower, and she feels a sudden, sharp sting, as though the plant recoiled from her touch. She jerks her hand back, staring at the flower, which now seems to shift slightly, as if it were watching her. The air grows colder, and the once inviting garden feels like a labyrinth, the paths winding and twisting in ways they shouldn't. The trees appear to lean in closer, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. She tries to leave, but every step she takes feels like the garden is pulling her back, trapping her in its embrace. The sound of roots shifting beneath the soil becomes louder, like the garden is alive, breathing, moving, waiting. Helena wakes with a start, her heart pounding in her chest, sweat clinging to her skin. But the dream's grip on her doesn't loosen. The scent of soil and flowers lingers in the room, as if it had followed her from the dream into reality. She glances at the window, half expecting to see the garden staring back at her, but all she sees is the darkness. Yet, in that darkness, she feels it, the presence of someone watching. And then, just as she's about to shake it off, as her imagination, she hears it. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper from outside, carried by the still night air. Helena. In the days following the dream, Helena can't shake the eerie feeling that something is terribly wrong with the garden. At first, it's subtle. Plants seem to shift slightly, vines stretch farther than they should, and flowers bloom in places she swore were barren. Marcos reassures her, chalking it up to the stress of the move, but Helena's unease only deepens. One morning, she steps outside to tend to a patch of roses and finds them wilting, their petals blackened as if scorched overnight. Yet, beneath the black petals, she notices something unsettling, faint imprints of what look like fingerprints, as if someone had touched the flowers with charred hands. The air is thick with the scent of decay, though the rest of the garden seems perfectly alive. At night, the strange occurrences intensify. The garden, once a peaceful sanctuary, becomes a source of dread. Helena starts hearing faint sounds, the low creak of branches, like the groaning of an old house, and the persistent rustle of leaves, though there's no wind. It's as if the garden is whispering to her, beckoning her closer. She tries to ignore it, convincing herself it's all in her head, but the feeling of being watched grows stronger. Every time she steps outside, she senses eyes on her, though no one is there. The plants seem to shift, almost imperceptibly, in her peripheral vision, as if they're aware of her presence. One night, unable to sleep, Helena stands by the window, gazing out at the garden bathed in moonlight. The shadows between the trees are thick and impenetrable, but something catches her eye. A faint movement, something small, darting between the shrubs. She narrows her eyes, trying to focus, when suddenly a figure appears. It's fleeting, just a shadowy silhouette, standing motionless by the garden center, but it's enough to make her heart race. She blinks, and it's gone, but the impression lingers. It wasn't human. The next morning, she finds footprints in the damp soil, leading to the heart of the garden. They are not hers, and they are not Marcos's. They are too small, too delicate, like they belong to a child, or something else entirely. The garden, once her pride and joy, has become a maze of terror, where each step feels like she's treading on something alive. The sensation of roots shifting beneath her feet grows stronger, as if the earth itself is trying to pull her under. And then, as she kneels to examine a strange, twisted vine creeping up the side of the house, she hears it again, a whisper, unmistakable this time, soft and cold, carried on the breeze. "Helena, come closer." Her blood runs cold. She looks around, heart pounding, but she's alone, or so she thinks. Helena's nights have become a prison of nightmares, but this time, the dream feels more real than ever. She is once again in the garden, but now the once beautiful scenery is twisted and grotesque. The moon hangs unnaturally low in the sky, casting an eerie, silvery glow over the plants that seem to writhe and sway as if beckoning her deeper into the darkness. The air is suffocatingly still, with only the faintest sound of leaves rustling, like something slithering through the shadows. Every breath Helena takes feels heavy, as if the very atmosphere is pressing down on her, drawing her closer to the heart of the garden, where something sinister waits. As she walks, the ground beneath her feet feels unstable, as if the soil is shifting, trying to swallow her whole. The trees are no longer just trees. Their branches twist into unnatural shapes, reaching out like skeletal arms, their bark groaning as if alive. The flowers that once bloomed in vibrant colors now ooze a dark, thick liquid, dripping onto the ground like blood. Helena's heartbeat pounds in her ears, and yet she cannot stop herself from moving forward. Something is pulling her, something unseen but undeniably powerful. The whispers return, louder now, clearer, weaving through the air like a chorus of lost souls calling her name. Helena, Helena. At the center of the garden, she sees it, an ancient tree, towering over the rest, its bark blackened and gnarled, twisted in ways that seem unnatural. Its roots pulse with a sickly light, stretching out across the garden like veins. Beneath its thick, twisted canopy, she can make out shapes, human shapes, twisted and contorted, trapped within the roots, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. They aren't just part of the dream. They are real. These are the souls of those who have been claimed by the garden. And now, it wants her too. Suddenly, the ground gives way beneath her, and Helena is pulled down by the roots, their tendrils wrapping around her ankles, wrists, and throat, tightening with every struggle. She gasps for air, but the vines constrict, cutting off her breath. The garden is no longer just alive. It is hungry. She can feel the pull, as if her very life force is being drained, the earth beneath her throbbing like a heartbeat. In the distance, she hears faint, desperate cries, the voices of those who came before her, now trapped within the garden's depths. Just when Helena believes she will be swallowed whole, she awakens abruptly, her heart racing, gasping for breath in her darkened bedroom. But something is different this time. The dream hasn't entirely ended. Her body is covered in dirt, her skin marked by tiny scratches, as though the garden had reached out to her even in her sleep. And the sound, the whispering, is still there, faint but persistent. She can hear it coming from outside her window. The same voice from the dream, calling her name. Helena, come closer. Shaking, she rushes to the window, and her heart stops. In the pale moonlight, she sees the tree from her dream, standing in the center of her real garden, its roots creeping toward the house. Helena's reality is now entangled with the nightmares that haunt her. The line between dream and waking life has blurred, leaving her in a constant state of dread. The garden no longer feels like a sanctuary. It feels like a living entity, watching her every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. Determined to understand what is happening, she delves into the history of the house and the garden. What she finds is far more disturbing than she could have ever imagined. Buried deep within the local archives, she uncovers a dark past. The garden was once the site of a tragic series of disappearances, dating back decades. The previous owner, a reclusive woman named Isadora Varela, had been an eccentric botanist obsessed with rare and exotic plants. Neighbors spoke of her as a woman who spent more time among her plants than with people. But there were whispers, rumors that her obsession went beyond mere horticulture. Some said that she dabbled in dark rituals, that the garden was more than a passion project. It was a prison. Isadora believed that the soul could be trapped within the earth, and that certain plants could capture and hold the essence of the dead. People began to avoid the house after several local children went missing, their last known location being near the garden's edge. Isadora vanished soon after, leaving behind no trace, except for the garden that continued to thrive, unnaturally vibrant and overgrown. Helena feels a cold dread settling in her chest as she realizes the truth. The garden is not just alive, it is cursed, a malevolent force that has claimed lives, and now it wants her and Marcos. Desperate to confirm her suspicions, she returns to the garden, this time with a purpose. She digs into the earth near the tree at the garden center, the one that haunts her dreams. As the shovel hits the ground, she feels the soil pulse beneath her feet, almost as if the garden is protesting, trying to stop her. Her hands shake as she digs deeper, the dirt growing colder with each layer she removes, until finally her shovel strikes something solid. Her heart pounds as she kneels down to clear the dirt, revealing what appears to be a stone slab. With trembling hands, she brushes away the remaining soil and uncovers a carved inscription. It's a name, Isadora Varela. Beneath the name, there are words in a language she doesn't recognize, but they radiate a dark energy, sending a chill down her spine. It's a grave, but it's more than that. Helena realizes with dawning horror that Isadora's body is not buried here. Her soul is bound to the garden, and the plants that grow here are not fed by water alone. They thrive on the essence of the living. But the most terrifying revelation is yet to come. Helena notices something glinting beneath the dirt, tangled in the roots of the tree. She pulls it free, her breath catching in her throat. It's a locket, old and tarnished, with a photograph inside. A photo of a child, one of the missing children from the old news clippings she had found. The child's wide, terrified eyes stare back at her, as if pleading for help. Helena drops the locket, her blood running cold. The whispers begin again, louder this time, not just in her head, but all around her, echoing through the garden. Join us, stay with us, forever. Panic grips her as she stumbles backward, but something else catches her eye. The roots of the tree are moving, writhing beneath the soil, slowly creeping toward her. She scrambles to her feet and runs back to the house, her heart racing. When she slams the door behind her, she can still hear the garden's whispers, growing fainter as she retreats. We're waiting, Helena. Now she knows the garden's secret, but the question remains. Can she escape before it claims her and Marcos, just as it claimed those before them? Helena is trapped in a waking nightmare, her once beloved garden now a realm of unspeakable horror. Every passing moment feels like a countdown to the inevitable, as the garden's roots seem to tighten their grip on her and Marcos. She knows she has to act, but she's lost, caught between fear and disbelief. The discovery of the grave, the cursed locket, and the whispers that haunt her every step have shaken her to the core. But one thing is clear. If she doesn't find a way to stop the garden, it will consume them both. Helena begins her search for answers, diving deeper into the town's hidden history. She uncovers old records of the disappearances, tales of people who ventured too close to the garden and were never seen again. Each story has an eerie familiarity, as if the same force that claimed them is now stalking her. Desperate, she reaches out to an elderly man who lives in the outskirts of town, someone who had known Isadora Varela before her disappearance. The locals speak of him in hushed tones, claiming he knows more about the cursed garden than anyone else alive. When Helena arrives at the man's small, dilapidated house, she feels an overwhelming sense of dread, as if stepping into another world. The air here is heavy, stagnant, and the silence is thick, broken only by the creaking of the wind through ancient trees. The man, Elias, opens the door cautiously, his sunken eyes betraying a lifetime of fear and knowledge. Helena explains her situation, barely able to keep the tremor from her voice. Elias listens in silence, nodding grimly as she describes the dreams, the moving plants, and the whispers that seem to follow her everywhere. "You're too far in now," Elias says in a voice like dry leaves scraping the ground. "The garden's claimed you. It won't let go unless you do something drastic." He tells her of Isadora's twisted practices, her belief that the life force of humans could nourish plants in unnatural ways. The garden, he explains, is alive because it is fed by souls. The souls of the innocent, trapped within the roots and flowers, their essence drained to fuel its endless growth. Isadora's own soul, bound to the garden after her death, controls the plants, and now she is searching for new victims to sustain her twisted legacy. Helena's stomach churns as Elias reveals the final piece of the puzzle. The only way to break the garden's hold is to sever Isadora's connection to it. This can only be done by destroying the tree at the center of the garden, the source of its power. But the task won't be easy. The garden will fight back, and those who have been consumed by it will do everything in their power to stop her. Once you enter the garden to destroy the tree, you may never come out again, Elias warns, his voice filled with the weight of countless tragedies. Helena knows she has no choice. Marcos has started to change, too. His once warm demeanor has grown distant, his eyes vacant, as if the garden's influence is spreading inside him. He spends hours standing at the window, staring at the garden, murmuring in his sleep about the voices calling him. Helena fears that if she doesn't act soon, Marcos will become another soul bound to the cursed earth. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Helena prepares herself for the journey into the garden. Armed with an old axe and a determination born of terror, she waits for nightfall, when the whispers are at their loudest and the garden is most alive. As she steps outside, the air is thick with the scent of decay and damp earth. The garden seems to pulse, as if sensing her intentions. The shadows between the trees stretch out longer than they should, and the wind carries the faint sound of voices, not just whispers anymore, but pleading, desperate cries for help. Helena presses on, each step a battle against the overwhelming urge to turn back. She knows that every moment counts, that the garden is closing in around her, and that somewhere deep within its twisted labyrinth, Isadora waits, ready to reclaim another soul. The night air is thick with tension as Helena steps into the garden, her heart pounding in her chest. The once beautiful sanctuary now feels like a trap closing in around her, with every shadow hiding a malevolent force waiting to strike. The whispers that once seemed distant now echo all around her, growing louder with each step, as if the garden is calling her name, urging her to give in. Her grip tightens on the axe as she moves toward the towering tree at the center of the garden, the dark heart of this cursed place. The moon hangs low in the sky, casting eerie shadows that twist and writhe, and the air is thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. As she approaches the tree, the ground beneath her feet begins to shift, as though the earth itself is alive, pulsing with a dark energy. The roots snake out from the base of the tree, writhing like living creatures, moving toward her with deliberate intent. Helena's breath catches in her throat as she watches the gnarled, blackened branches stretch out above her, the bark groaning like ancient bones. The whispers grow louder, more insistent, as if the souls trapped within the garden are warning her, or worse, luring her closer. Helena, the voice is unmistakable now. A voice that isn't just in her head, but real, calling her name from the depths of the tree. Suddenly, the ground beneath her cracks open, and Helena stumbles, falling to her knees as roots coil around her legs like snakes. Panic surges through her as she struggles to free herself, but the roots tighten, pulling her closer to the tree. She can feel the pull, as if the garden itself is hungry, desperate to consume her. Her skin prickles with cold as she looks up at the tree's twisted trunk, and there, in the bark, she sees faces, twisted, contorted faces of those who had been consumed before her, their eyes hollow, mouths frozen in silent screams. The realization crashes over her like a wave. These are the souls of the missing, bound to the tree, their essence feeding its dark power. Helena raises the axe, her hands trembling, and swings at the roots, holding her down. The blade slices through them, and she scrambles to her feet, her pulse pounding in her ears. She knows what she must do: destroy the tree and sever Isadora's connection to the garden. But as she raises the axe to strike the trunk, the garden fights back. The roots lash out like tentacles, wrapping around her arms and legs, pulling her toward the tree. The whispers turn into screams, a cacophony of voices begging, warning, and cursing all at once. The tree's bark begins to split open, and from within, a figure starts to emerge, a shadowy, twisted form with hollow eyes and a skeletal frame. It's Isadora, or what's left of her. Isadora's ghostly form hovers before Helena, her eyes gleaming with a cold, malevolent hunger. "You're too late," she hisses, her voice like the rustle of dead leaves. "The garden belongs to me, and now. So do you?" Helena swings the axe wildly, desperate to cut through the roots and free herself, but Isadora is relentless. The ground beneath her quakes as the garden itself rises up, its vines and roots wrapping tighter around her, pulling her closer to the dark heart of the tree. Helena feels her strength slipping away, the life being drained from her with every passing second. In a final, desperate act, Helena raises the axe one last time and swings with all her remaining strength, striking the base of the tree. The blade sinks deep into the blackened wood, and for a moment, the garden seems to shudder, the roots retracting slightly as if in pain. Isadora's form flickers, her hollow eyes narrowing with rage. "No!" she shrieks, her voice echoing through the night as the tree groans and cracks under the weight of Helena's strike. The ground trembles violently, and the roots loosen their grip, giving Helena just enough time to pull the axe free and strike again. With a deafening crack, the tree begins to split down the middle, its dark essence spilling out into the night air like a thick, black mist. The faces in the bark twist and contort one last time before fading into nothingness. Isadora's form wavers, her screams filling the night as she is pulled back into the tree, her ghostly figure dissolving into the darkness. The garden shrieks in agony, the plants wilting and dying as the tree collapses inward, its power broken. Helena collapses to the ground, gasping for breath, her body aching from the battle. The garden is silent now, the once vibrant plants reduced to withered husks. The air feels lighter, freer, but Helena knows it's not over. As she looks up at the smoldering remains of the tree, she realizes something is still wrong. The roots may be severed, but a single flower remains, blooming at the base of the tree's remains, its petals dark and pulsing with an unnatural glow. Helena stares at it, her heart sinking. The garden may have been weakened, but its curse lingers, waiting for the next soul to claim. The garden is eerily silent now, its once vibrant colors drained into a landscape of twisted, withered vines, and decaying flowers. Helena stands in the center of it all, her body aching, her breath ragged. The once proud tree, the heart of this nightmare, lies splintered at her feet, its roots curling lifelessly into the earth. But as she looks around, the sense of victory that had briefly flickered in her chest begins to fade. There's something wrong. The air, though still, feels heavy, oppressive, like a storm waiting to break. Her eyes fall on the single flower still blooming at the base of the shattered tree. Its petals are dark, almost black, and they seem to pulse, glowing faintly in the dim light, as if alive. Helena approaches the flower cautiously, her instincts screaming for her to leave, but she can't look away. The flower, unlike the others, isn't wilting. Instead, it stands tall, defiant, as though mocking her. The whispers have stopped, but in the back of her mind, she feels something else. Not a sound, but a presence. It's faint, but unmistakable, a lingering shadow of the garden's power, still there, still watching. As she reaches out to touch the flower, a cold chill runs down her spine. The petals feel unnaturally soft, almost like skin. She jerks her hand back, heart pounding. The garden may be dying, but something has survived. Suddenly, she hears a noise behind her, a soft rustling, like leaves stirring in the wind, though the air is perfectly still. Helena turns, her eyes scanning the darkened remains of the garden. There, in the shadows, something moves. A figure, just barely visible, slips between the skeletal trees. It's small, too small to be human. Her pulse quickens as the figure disappears into the darkness, and she feels the familiar dread clawing at her chest. Is it one of the souls trapped in the garden, now freed? Or is it something else? Something new, born from the darkness she thought she had destroyed? Helena stumbles back, her mind racing. She thought the nightmare was over, but now she realizes she may have only scratched the surface. The flower, the lingering presence, the shadowy figure, it all points to something far deeper, far darker than she could have imagined. The garden isn't just a place. It's a force, a curse that stretches beyond the boundaries of this property. And now, it has its sights set on her. The whispers haven't stopped. They've merely shifted, waiting for the right moment to return. The ground beneath her feet feels alive, pulsing faintly, like the heartbeat of something lying dormant, ready to awaken once more. Helena stares down at the flower, her mind filled with a single, horrifying thought. What if I didn't stop it? What if I only made it stronger? The thought chills her to the bone. She knows she should leave, run far away from this place and never look back. But something roots her to the spot. The garden's pull is still there, faint but undeniable. And as she turns to leave, the wind shifts, carrying with it the faintest of whispers. Her name, once again, Helena. The story doesn't end here. The mystery is far from solved, and the garden's secrets have yet to be fully unearthed. Will Helena be able to escape its grasp? Or is she destined to become another soul trapped within its roots? If you've made it this far, share your theories in the comments. What do you think the garden truly is? Could it be stopped? Or is it beyond saving? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more chilling stories like this one. And remember, sometimes the things we leave behind aren't really gone. They're just waiting for you. As Helena retreats from the center of the decaying garden, her mind swirls with the lingering fear that something far worse remains hidden in the shadows. The oppressive silence hangs in the air like a thick fog, broken only by the faintest rustling of dead leaves underfoot. She feels the weight of the place pressing down on her, as if the garden, though wounded, still holds its breath, watching and waiting. Every instinct tells her to leave, to escape before it claims her entirely. But something stops her, an unshakable feeling that this isn't the end. It's only the beginning. Her eyes return once more to the lone flower, standing defiantly amidst the dying landscape. It pulses softly in the fading moonlight, its petals dark as night, like a beacon of something sinister still lingering beneath the surface. The ground around it seems to hum with an energy she can't quite explain, as if the garden is regenerating, drawing strength from a deeper, darker source. She steps back, her heart racing, but the whispers have returned. Faint, indistinct, like voices carried on the wind. They're not loud, but they're there, and they fill her with an unspeakable dread. Helena knows she needs to go, but her thoughts won't quiet. What if the garden isn't dying at all? What if, instead of severing its power, she's awakened something even more dangerous? The shadows between the trees shift unnaturally, almost like they're alive, moving with an intent she can't decipher. She catches glimpses of movement out of the corner of her eye. Small, flickering shapes darting between the trunks, too fast to be human, too deliberate to be mere illusions. Something is out there, watching her, and it's getting closer. Just as she turns to leave, she feels it again. The ground beneath her shifts ever so slightly, almost imperceptibly. A low rumble pulses through the earth, as if something beneath the surface is stirring. Helena freezes, her heart pounding in her ears. The whispers grow louder, more insistent, now clearly calling her name. Helena. Helena, come closer. Panic sets in, but her legs feel like lead, rooted to the spot as if the garden itself is holding her there. The flower's pulsing light intensifies, casting eerie shadows across the dead landscape. It's not over. It was never over. Helena stumbles backward, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she struggles to tear herself away from the garden's grip. The shadows between the trees ripple, and she realizes with mounting horror that they're not just shadows. They're figures, ghostly, distorted forms of those who came before her, drawn to the garden, trapped forever in its curse. Their faces are twisted in agony, their hollow eyes locked on her, pleading silently for release. She turns and runs, the weight of their stares burning into her back as the garden's whispers follow her into the night. When she reaches the safety of her house, slamming the door behind her, Helena collapses against the wall, her body trembling with fear. But the whispers, they don't stop. They echo through the walls, faint but unrelenting, as if the garden's influence has already seeped into her home, into her mind. She presses her hands over her ears, trying to block them out, but it's no use. The garden is inside her now, a part of her, and it's not going to let go. The last sound she hears before collapsing into an exhausted sleep is a soft voice, unmistakable in its tone. Helena, you belong to us now. The next morning, Helena wakes with a start. The house is quiet, almost too quiet. She peers out the window, half expecting to see the garden still looming, but it's gone. Or at least, it appears to be. The trees are withered, the flowers dead, but she can't shake the feeling that it's merely hiding, biding its time, waiting for the right moment to return. The whispers have stopped, but she knows they're not gone for good. Deep down, she feels the garden's presence, lurking just beneath the surface, watching, waiting. And though the nightmare seems to have ended, she knows the garden is still alive, waiting for her to make the next move. What truly lies beneath the garden's cursed soil? Will Helena be able to escape its pull, or is she destined to become another soul trapped within its roots? Could the garden's dark power grow again, stronger, more malevolent than ever? Let us know your theories in the comments. What do you think happened to Helena? Is this really the end, or just the beginning of something far more terrifying? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with those who love a good mystery. And remember, some nightmares never truly end. They just wait, lurking in the shadows, ready to take root again.